Hey legends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about the 4 signs that you are underfueling your workouts, in your training, and you're riding on your dirt bike. Also going to give you the tools on how to actually fix it so you can get more consistent with your training and get better results on your dirt bike. This is a topic that's close to my heart. Honestly, looking back in hindsight, knowing what I know now, I came up through the 90s. We didn't have the knowledge, the tools, or the supplements even back then that we have now. So I went through a lot of pain when I first started racing cross countries when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, purely just from essentially just starving myself, and I didn't know why. We'll get into that. I'm going to throw some slides up here on the screen you'll be able to see. We got 4 big red flags, and number 1 would be that at a hard race day, like maybe it's a cross country race, you're bonking at the end of the day. Maybe it's a day of sprints, you get halfway through the day and that energy just starts to tank. Another big one would be in Australia, we actually have our state and our national off-road events are back-to-back days. So we'll race a 3-hour cross country on a Saturday, and then you've got to come back the next day and back it up with a full day of sprints. So if you're under fueling, particularly if you're a 2-hour cross country racer, in the clubman classes in Australia, we race 2 hours. I know a lot of classes in the GNCC do too, some of the vets and those lower classes. If you're a 2-hour racer, you can kind of get away with under fueling. If you've got a bit of like mental grit and a bit of toughness there, you can kind of push through a 2-hour race and being a little bit under fueled. It's going to be a lot harder to do that in a 3-hour race. And where the under fueling will really show up is in that second day. So again, in Australia, we have these back-to-back events. If you're under fueling yourself leading into the race and on that first day of racing, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to back up and go again and put in a solid day of racing the next day. That would be the most common red flag. And honestly, again, in my own story, that's exactly what I went through back in the day when I was 17, 18, 19, racing these 3 hours. I had no idea. I was eating a couple of Wheat Bix and a banana for brekkie. I'd go race a 3-hour. I had 1 Gatorade diluted because Gatorade had just come out. So everyone thought, oh, Gatorade's this awesome sports drink. So I would dilute 1 Gatorade in a 2-litre Camelback, drink that for the race, wonder why I'd hit the wall at the 90-minute mark. I felt like a wet tea towel flapping off the bike for the last half of the race. We'd go drive home, get McDonald's on the way home, which honestly was probably the best thing I ate all day, just in terms of the calories. It was actually giving me a bunch of calories. We'd get home at midnight and I'd just be like completely cooked for 2-3 days, having to go to work, body aching, headaches. And all I thought was I was just unfit. I just thought I've just got to ride my dirt bike more. I just need to get fitter and be able to ride. That's why I'm so fatigued. Looking back, I was literally just starving myself because I didn't know. So the next big red flag, which we kind of touched on it, is you just got poor recovery. So that can show up in these back-to-back events. Maybe you feel sore, fatigued, lacking energy the day after with these back-to-back events, or just after a big race in general, but it also shows up in your training. If you're trying to train and put in some solid strength sessions, or maybe some longer sort of cardio efforts or some intervals, you might feel that you struggle to recover. Or a common one is, I'm always sore. If you're always sore and you're training consistently, then the big red flag there is your body's just not getting enough of what it needs to recover, which the biggest ones are our sleep, and then it's the nutrients, giving the body the nutrients, which is our food and our hydration. The next big red flag, which kind of again comes off the back of that one, is struggling to put consistent weeks of training together. If you are trying to train, maybe you even get a good week in. You get a good week of training in, you hit a few sessions, then all of a sudden you feel like your energy just tanks, you fall off a cliff, and you don't even have that recovery seems to tank a little bit. You don't even have the energy to sort of want to train. So your training consistency and volume just kind of looks like this. It's like a roller coaster. Our training volume ideally should be pretty much like this for the most part. We'll always have deloads in there around racing, etc. However, for the most part, like when we're training, we want to be stringing as many back-to-back consistent weeks of training together. If you struggle to do that, you get a few good sessions in and then you feel like you can't recover, you have to take a few days off, big red flag that you're under fueling. And then the last one, the fourth sign would be if you're struggling in all of those three areas that I've mentioned, it's very common that you may be getting sick frequently. So what I would consider frequently getting sick is more than 2 times a year. So maybe like it's not that uncommon to pick up a cold in winter. If your immune system is healthy, you might get a cold and maybe it sort of knocks you around for a few days and then you're good to go again. You can get back to training. If you're getting a cold or a sniffle every other week or once a month or multiple times a year, or when you get a cold, it takes you weeks and weeks and weeks and months to get over it, that can be a sign, again, that your body is simply not getting enough of what it needs to recover. The immune system is under stress, essentially. You can get away with that under fueling for small periods of time, but when that becomes chronic, that's when these issues tend to compound and the inconsistency becomes more apparent. So number one on how to fix that would be having just a basic understanding of energy balance. So I'm going to open up my Race Ready Live app, which is the training app. When my clients sync their Garmin account, not only can they see their training, they can see all of their recovery metrics. They automatically sync into the dashboard. I'll pop this up on the screen for you anyway. So you can see my calorie burn. Last week, I had a pretty light week because I knew I was going to have a big few days. One of my clients came down to stay for 4 or 5 days. We went in a 4-hour Pony Express together, raced a grass track the next day, did a 100K mountain bike ride the day after that, and then did a 150K trail ride, which was 5 hours of seat time on our dirt bikes the next day. So you can see my calorie burn last week. I took a little bit of a lighter week. Like I said, I knew I was going to have a few big days, so I was a little bit under 3,000 calories. And then you can see when the 4-hour Pony Express was like a 5,000 calorie day. The next day, my watch went flat at the grass track, so I'm guessing that would have been around about a 3,500 calorie day. Then the 100K mountain bike ride, you can see, was about 4,500 calorie day. And then the 5 hours on our dirt bike on Tuesday was around a bit over a 3,500 calorie day. The easiest analogy for you guys to understand, and this is why I've got the mighty YZ here, you can see this 12.5 litre IMS tank. So when we did that 150K trail ride, I got 125 Ks roughly out of 12 litres of fuel on this bike. So on that trail ride, as you guys will know, when you're doing single track and a little bit of fire trail, you're not hard on the gas all the time. For any of you guys that know what the Hatter Desert Race is, if you don't know what it is, it's a wide open 4-hour desert race out. You're like wedged in top gear, like speeds of up to 100 mile an hour, 160 Ks, deep sand through the trees, big sand rollers. At that race, if I raced this bike hit there, I would be lucky to get out of that tank, I'd be lucky to get 50 or 60K. So it's basically doubled the fuel consumption. And the reason that is because there's a lot more load on the engine at something like Hatter when you're wide open, down fast straights in deep sand, as opposed to going trail riding in tight single track where you're only about quarter throttle a lot of the time. So our body is no different. If you're spending your day having a rest day, or you've got a day job at a desk, and you're not training that day, your energy burn is going to be a lot lower than when you go and race your dirt bike. If you have a job that includes a lot of manual labor, maybe you're a tradesperson, your energy burn is going to be a lot higher than someone that sits at a desk. Having a basic understanding of energy balance, we understand that when we place more load on the system, which is our body through exercise, then our calorie burn is going to be higher. So we need to support that on those days. You can see on that calorie burn chart, I ate a ton more food than I normally do on those days because I knew I was burning a ton more calories on those days. So for me to recover, for me to be able to back up on those 4 days and do those big 4 days of training, I had to eat a hell of a lot more food than what I would normally eat on one of those days when I only burnt 2,800 calories. So the thing with the Garmin and any watch for that matter and the calorie burn, it's not 100% accurate. It's not to say because that says I burnt 5,000 calories that I definitely burnt 5,000 calories and I definitely need to eat 5,000 calories. But what it does show is those fluctuations. So it may not be 100% accurate, but it can give us a guide. And the biggest thing is we can see those fluctuations. So we know when it goes up a lot on those days where we ride our dirt bike or we do something long duration or intense, we need to eat a little bit more on those days. So we can just use it as a tool and a bit of a reference point to be able to understand what our energy burn is on an easy day of training or a rest day, and on a hard day when we're riding our dirt bike or doing a bigger training session. So number two, which kind of comes off the back of that, and which we also have built into the Race Ready Live app, would then be tracking some food. So we have a meal tracker built into the Race Ready app, which again, I'll pop this up on the screen. But if we know on average, so normally my average calorie burn's about 2,800 to 3,000 calories. With those big 4 days I've done this week, my average calorie burns are close to 3,500 calories now. So what you can do is look at your average calorie burn. Your Garmin will tell you what your average weekly calorie burn is. And again, we can just use that as a bit of a baseline. So the first exercise is to just track an average day of what you're eating now. How does that match up to your average calorie burn that Garmin's telling you you're burning? But what you will begin to see is that whole foods contain a lot less calories as opposed to some processed foods. So a hamburger and chips, as an example, way more calories than a chicken breast and some sweet potato and some veggies or a salad on a plate. If there's a massive gap there, then we need to sort of level that up. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. We don't have to eat exactly what Garmin tells us we're burning. However, if you've got some red flags in 4 of those areas and what you're eating it doesn't really match up to what you're burning, that's some low hanging fruit for you right there. Second exercise would be just building out a day. So you can do that in the Race Ready Live meal tracker. There's recipes in there. You can add individual foods. You can save your favorite meals. But what we're looking to do here is build out just a default day. So a breakfast, lunch, a tea, and snacks in there around your training. That gets you pretty much that ballpark figure of your average calorie burn. So that would be what I call a default day. So you know on an average day, say you're training for an hour and this is my average calorie burn. If I eat these meals, I'm going to be pretty close to getting my calories in for the day. So that could be what you would consider a default day. And then you can build out like a race day one that's maybe a little bit higher in calories, maybe has some more calorie dense sort of processed type foods in there potentially. So then you have a basic understanding of energy balance. You have a default day of eating that kind of matches that average calorie burn. Then the last little piece to this puzzle is just having a little bit of an understanding around load management. On the screen there, this is just talking about training load. So I describe our training load as a brick. So a brick of training is our weekly training volume. So you can see there across the bottom, it's how many days per week are you training. Up the side is how many hours per day. So a very simple example here might be 5 days per week of training and 1 hour per day. So you're training 5 times a week. Very simple calculation there. So your total training, your brick for the week is 5 hours of training. So if your body, your system is adapted to 5 hours of training, you probably wouldn't want to go from 5 hours to 10 hours. That's a 100% increase. You're doubling your training load in 1 week. So what we might like to do is if you're going to train more, if you have the ability to train more, then we might add in 1 hour of training per week. We might make one of those days a 2-hour session. So you go from 5 hours to 6 hours. You might do 6 hours of training for 3 to 4 weeks. Once that becomes normal, once you figure out that you need to eat a little bit more food on that day to bridge that calorie burn, then your body's adapted to 6 hours of training per week. If you have the ability to train more, then okay, we might go to 7 hours per week. You get my point here though. One of the most common issues that people face is the inconsistency. They might train 1 hour 1 week, then they train 5 hours the next week. Then they only train 2 hours the next. So their training load looks like this. Whereas remember, we want our training load, for the most part, when we're putting in solid weeks of training, we want it to be somewhat consistent. The total volume will be different from person to person, but we want the load to be somewhat consistent. When the load's consistent, our body can adapt to it. When there's chops and changes, too much, not enough, our body kind of doesn't really know what's going on. and that can be a lot harder for your body to adapt to the training. I hope that helps today, guys. If you need any more information around your nutrition or fueling side, I've got a link down in the description to this episode. That's a free PDF. It's a hydration and fueling guide that I give all of my clients when they start training with me. So if you'd like to download that and have a read of it, if you've got any questions, drop a comment on this episode. I'll be more than happy to help.